Al Jolson's, the jazz singer, was the first talkie, as they called it. So we went back and we looked at Al Jolson's various performances, and we hear, "Happy days are here again." And we were like, oh, shit. So we go, "Happy days are here again." It wasn't a joke to us. It was like, how do we, compare that era to the Buppy era, as we called it, the Black urban professionals. We were taking the vibe of our kind of what we call sophisto funk. We didn't play gut bucket funk because we're from New York. So we go. Bernard's original thing, he would just went. Something like that. So I just screamed, "Walk." And as soon as I did that, he came up with the bass line just out of nowhere. This is really the true story of me, that the concept of becoming an orchestrator and an arranger was so prestigious to me because back in the day, we'd have albums and we look at the back of the album and you would see these credits, producer, Teo Macero. Like, who is that guy? They were like the Wizard of Oz, that man behind the curtain. Like, I wanted to be Burt Bacharach. I wanted to be that man behind the curtain. And it was so important to me. I love seeing that credit, produced by Nile Rodgers. This is where we cut our first album. And our first album was the very first project done in this room. And it started us on a path that we never imagined. So we've done everything from Chic, Sister Sledge, Madonna, B-52s. Well, Bowie we did upstairs, but the rooms were similar. I mean, it's ridiculous. It sounds like bragging, so a lot. I actually started composing music from the age of 6 when I was a child because of the standardized education system. They taught music in the school, and they taught art in the schools. I had cool artistic people in my world just because my parents were beatniks and they really lived that life. On any given day at my apartment, you could see Thelonious Monk or Nina Simone or Gloria Lynn. Because of my bohemian upbringing, I was hearing more sophisticated music, particularly classical music. So I played classical music on the flute, the recorder. Then I switched to the clarinet. And I played the clarinet until I was 16 years old. And that's when I switched from clarinet to guitar. I never touched a guitar before the age of 16. And I was working with Sesame Street at 19. Sesame Street, as you know, was pretty sophisticated music. A lot of the guitar parts were done by Toots Thielman, one of the greatest guitar players in the world. When I met Bernard, I was a jazz stylist, classical guy, and Bernard used to always try and make me play funk. And I was like going, I love listening to it, but I don't want to play like that. Bernard had been telling me to get a Stratocaster for ages. And I was like, no, I had big jazz guitars. But every time I tried to turn up, my jazz guitar would feed back. We then were doing a gig and we had an opening act for us. So the opening act, who was just a covers band, came out and played through my equipment. And it was a young kid. And then this kid, he plugged his guitar into my amplifier and was like smoking. And Bernard would look at me and like, if looks could kill, he'd be going, motherfucker, I told you to get a Stratocaster. So I ran out, traded in my expensive jazz box, and got this guitar that I now call the Hitmaker. In 1973, I got that guitar at a cheap little pawn shop in Miami and came back to my little motel room and just practiced, just like having such tight control so that I didn't produce any overtones or play any strings that I didn't mean to play. And after a few weeks of doing that, I emerged as this guy who could play any song in chords. And to this day, that's my calling card. When I'm composing a song, if you take the guitar part out, it sort of doesn't sound like the song anymore because I'm actually playing melody and rhythm at the same time. Bernard and I had this sort of agreement that we would openly not talk about my political background and we wouldn't talk about his sort of apolitical background. So one day, Bernard and I went to the movies together and we saw this movie starring Jane Fonda called They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It was about the dance marathons during the Depression. And all of a sudden, boop, 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 light bulb goes off and we say, man, what was the time where Black people finally got sort of this sense of liberation and they were moving forward? It was during the sort of jazz era where they had this American art form. And the next thing you know, people were calling themselves king and count and duke. And we're like, that's what we want to be. You know, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, we could talk about this, but I'm not stepping on Bernard's toes. And he got it. I mean, that's what was wonderful about my partnership with Bernard. I would come up with these wacky ideas and he'd make them make sense. So Bernard suggested we call ourselves Chic because I had seen Roxy Music, whom I had never even heard of, and they were wearing like couture clothing. And in R&B music, everybody, you know, just go back and look at the Jackson 5 or whatever. Everybody was wearing uniforms and they all dressed the same. Roxy Music was all like, you know, this designer, that designer, this designer. And I said, let's do the Black version of that. Everybody dance. Clap your hands. I had written this song that went, I just dance, 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 dance. This is the hook. I had this long-winded chorus, and Bernard said, why don't you just call it Dance, Dance, Dance? And I said, you know what, bro? I am never going to write another song with at least your opinion. You come in and give me the final word. And so my hook that I originally thought was really catchy and wonderful was relegated to a contrapuntal line over the verse. And frankly, got to be really honest here, the hook was completed by Luther Vandross because we hired Luther to be our vocal director. We did so many things on each other's projects and we never took credit. I was so honored to be an arranger and a producer. To me, that was just as prestigious, if not more so in a weird way, than being the composer. People always say, hey, no, you're such a great songwriter. I go, whoops, no, I'm not. I'm a pretty good song rewriter. I can have a terrific, in my mind, idea to start with, but by the time I finish with it, I've rewritten it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So that's how I think of myself, that I'm an arranger. And because of my arrangements, they become the foundation of the song. All that pressure got you down. Le Freak was because we didn't get into Studio 54 and the guy at the back door slammed the door in our faces and told us to fuck off. After that, we went home and wrote, aw, fuck off, don't fuck Studio 54. When we were saying F off and we were trying to make it something that was relatable to the culture, I went totally back to my hippie days. And I went to Bernard and I said, hey man, you know, like, how about like, you know, when you drop acid, man, and you like freak out, you have a bad trip. And Bernard looked at me and said, what? What the hell are you talking about? Because he was from down south and he had no idea. Like, what are you talking about? So instantly I got my black card back and I said, no, when you see a fly sister on the dance floor and you're freaking out, just because she's so awesome. And then Bernard went, bing, light bulb went off over his head. And he says, oh, and it's like that new dance my kids are doing. We decided we were going to make a dance record or a record or a song about a dance. Well, we went out and we bought 2 records that we could think of from our history that were about dances, and it was famous. So we thought the most famous dance record ever was Chubby Checker, The Twist. So we go out, we buy The Twist, and Chubby Checker goes, come on, baby, let's do the twist. Take me by the little hand, and go like this. And then he doesn't tell you how to do the dance. He goes, ee-ah, let's twist. We're like, whoa, okay, hold on a second. So we play the peppermint twist. They get to the part where you think they're going to tell you how to do it, and they go, well, all right. Okay. We go, what the? So now we write. It's called a freak. They're doing it night and day. And of course, we don't show you the way because we don't even know how to do the dance. And we just go, aw, freak out. Worked. Biggest selling song in Atlantic history. And we had no idea how to do the dance. I went to this club called the Gigi Barnum Room. And that particular night was not just a heavy trance night, but for some reason, I guess they were having a Diana Ross look-alike kind of night. So I was standing there at the urinal. It was like one of those trough kind of urinals where like 8 or 9 dudes could stand at the trough. And I just happened to look to my left and see 6 or 7 deep Diana Rosses. And I look to my right and I see 6 or 7 deep Diana Rosses. And I get so excited because this is the first star we ever worked with. I ran outside and I called Bernard up because, there was the days of pay phones. We didn't have cell phones yet. I said, wake up, write this down. He said, what? I says, write down, I'm coming out. He says, what? I says, write down, I'm coming out because I know I'm going to get drunk and forget. I'm telling you, if we do this, the gay community alone will buy 1 million records to have Diana Ross go, I'm coming out. It's but of course we couldn't tell Diana Ross, at least we were afraid to share that kind of information with her because we had just come off of a huge album with Sister Sledge. And at the time that we wrote this song called He's the Greatest Dancer, which was about having a one-night stand. The champion of dance, his moves will put you in a trance. We had no idea that Kathy Sledge, who was the lead vocalist on that, was a virgin, 15 years old, and deeply religious. And their mother was the manager of the band. Wait a minute, my daughter's not gonna have a one-night stand. She's a virgin. And they're oh. So even after that, disagreement, they realized that they went for the greatest ride of their lives by doing that album with us. And now it's love and friendship and, it's great. I mean, on that same song, we did the very first time that anyone had ever name-dropped fashion designers. Now try and buy a pop record without hearing that shit. I Want Your Love, that's the only song I've ever dreamt. And I had every note of the orchestration memorized. I could see it in my dream. And the thing is that early in my career, I used to sleep with manuscript paper next to the bed so that I could do, whatever scribbling I had to do. And every note on I Want Your Love on the recording is something that was already on the paper, except when the horns play the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. The concert master said to me, hey, Nile, what if the strings go up an octave? I was like, oh, that's a good idea. But other than that, every single thing is on the paper. And I dreamt that whole arrangement. I could do a 5-hour set And it's all stuff from I mean, like, people don't realize that I've done, things like David Lee Roth, Rick Ocasek, Halo 2. People laughed the other day when we were doing Tiny Desk, and they forgot that I had written Soul Glow and the whole score to Coming to America. Just let yourself go. The guys at Daft Punk, I had met them years earlier, and we had been trying to get together for ages. They had just done Tron, and it was the first time that they did a project with real live people, because everything they had done was just the two of them in their bedroom or whatever. But they said to me, Nile, we want to do an album as if the internet never existed. That's all they had to say to me. I said, oh, you just want to do a regular R&B record? I got it. I happened to say to Thomas, I said, dude, you're standing in the exact same spot that Bernard was standing in when we did our first single. And they said, how did you do Chic Records? And I said, well, turn off everybody except for the drums. Let me just give you my feeling of the groove. A few weeks go by, and Pharrell happens to go to Paris, and they ask Pharrell, what is he working on? And Pharrell says, well, I'm working on this Nile Rodgers kind of stuff. They looked at each other and laughed, and they said, really? Well, check this out.
All night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky.
That's just what happened to one of the records that was probably one of those big turning points in my life. Like, it was almost on the level of, Let's Dance or We Are Family or I'm Coming Out. I mean, it was life-changing. It was, at that time, Daft Punk was the coolest thing on the streets. The musical education that I was so fortunate to have gotten, I didn't realize that those programs were phased out of school. So young people who have a sense of music just figure out the best way they can make music. And so the early turntablists were actually using music that already existed to create other music. It was not until I had a panel with the Shockley brothers from Public Enemy that I realized that those music programs had been phased out of the schools. And they broke it down to me, and I was like going, damn, because up until then, I was a little bit upset because so many people were sampling our songs and not paying us and not giving us the credit. And I went into the club and I heard Rapper's Delight. Bang, bang, the boogie to the boogie, say up, jump the boogie to the bang, bang. I could tell it wasn't us right away, but that string fall off came right from our record, right from Good Times, and I could spot it a mile away because I had to pay for the guys from the New York Philharmonic to play on my record. You know how much it cost us to do that? How long it took us to write those kinds of string fall-offs and get the right players that are on the groove? And this whole concept of sampling became a thing and became a part of music. And to this very day, records are made all the time from other people's records. I mean, to this day, I cannot tell you how many big stars I have played with, and I'm listening to the record, and it's actually just their way of making records now. I mean, I was doing something with Anderson .Paak, and we're in there, and we're just writing original music, and Bruno Mars walks in and goes, hey, man, let's get that Lenny Kravitz record, and let's try that, because, I've never heard anyone use that loop. I'm like, whoa. Bruno Mars is a genius. What do you mean? Why are we listening to Lenny Kravitz? We are smart enough to write our own shit. But it was just the culture. It was this new culture had come in, and I understand. Why not start with a really good idea? Like I said, Public Enemy were the first people to turn me on to it, and I've been fans of that process ever since. But I want to keep my art form alive. So, Chic, we're still totally old school. We go in like a regular band and just jam.
We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing.